It comes in different colors and types. But how is it made? Well, like most things in life, it all starts with a little bit of raw material.
So this is a border Leicester whole entire sheep. The whole sheep from head to tail. So this is going to have to be washed and cleaned and carded and then it'll be run through a diz.
Our teacher today is Sonia Addington, the owner of a little shop in Boonville, Indiana called City Stitch. Much like the wool she works with, her future in yarn work was not always clear.
When we lived in Venezuela, my dad was military. We lived in Venezuela and we would be at the markets. There would be llama and alpaca and the ladies spinning on the hand spindles. And there would just be piles and piles of color and roving and hand spun yarn and the beautiful rugs they would make and the beautiful tapestries. You know, they would just be right there on the side of the road with their weaving going on and on and on. But, you know, 15, 16-year-old girl, I was more interested in life and, you know, just moving on, moving on.
She may not have known it at the time, but experiences like this would lay the groundwork for what was to come. Still working on our wool, Sonia gets the material more focused.
After this is clean, then it goes on the drum carder. So then you just keep filling the teeth here. And see how there's this metal part? You take the diz and you lift this up. So you would take something with a hole that small. If it was done at a factory or a mill, it would be done differently, but this is the way that you do it by hand. So the lighter that you do this, the better. You don't want to ever, it's like holding a baby bird that you want to keep safe and you don't want it to go away.
There are a few steps to get from raw wool to yarn, but life has taught Sonia to take a step at a time.
Always wanted a yarn shop, and I caught myself, you know, daydreaming, doodling the floor plan, you know, on papers at work and thinking of names. And I went to Walmart to work, and I know now that what I didn't know then was I was being prepared to run the cash register and you know, work with people on a daily basis and to have a lot of patience. And then I went to work for a local judge, and I was doing some accounting for him, which, you know, I learned how to set up my books during that.
The day-to-day work would weave Sonia the tight thread of experience she'd need to make her growing hobby into a career. Taking a seemingly average life and adding just a bit of color. And speaking of adding color,
so what I've done here is I've filled my pot with water, and I use citric acid, which is the preservative that you use for canning, and pour that in there, and that's actually what makes the dye stick to the yarn. And you always want to use very, very hot water. What I'm using is a powder dye, and I'm just gonna sprinkle this in. So when all that dye soaks into the wool, this water will be clear again, and I'll be able to use that water again. So this will just go into the colander, and the water will drip out, and then I will hang it to dry, and it'll be ready to knit.
it's funny how a little hue and a little tint can bring something together, whether that is on a skein of yarn, or in Sonia's case, finally bringing her dream of owning a yarn shop to fruition.
This was my dream building. You know, I'd driven by it and I said, this is where the yarn shop needs to go. When we walked in here, it was completely filthy. Well, my husband's imagination and hard work is what, and we were both working at the time and remodeling this building. The tin roof that you see on the ceiling, that was taken down from some friends of ours. It was a building. I was trying to chunk off the plaster from the brick, and it opened up and you can see the brick.
The fragments of Sonia's dream finally became a reality.
Every day I walk in the door, it's like, pinch me. Do I really get to work at my own yarn shop?
And as her dream comes to life, so does the final step in creating yarn.
I love spinning. It's a Zen experience. My goal here is to fill this bobbin with black alpaca. It's natural, it hasn't been dyed or anything. It's like rubbing your belly and patting your head. Really, you just, after you learn how to treadle for a while, which is what I'm doing with my feet, you just forget that you're even doing it. It becomes automatic.
As the wool spins into yarn, it can be a bit surprising how the finished product comes out. This too was the experience Sonia had when dreams of having a store finally came to be.
At Christmas, the year I was working at Toyota, we got a phone call, and the realtor said, identified himself and said, hey, you know, that deal went through on that building uptown on Locust Street. And I said, okay, thank you very much. So I went to the den where my husband was, and I said, did you buy a building uptown? And he said, Merry Christmas. I said, oh. He said, well, the kids and I were gonna, you know, surprise you with that, but it looks like you already know.
In life, it's hard to see how things will work out. Whether that's making a dream become a reality, or just making some wool into yarn. But one thing you can count on is at least you'll be knitting in the end.